Okay. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to our 25th of hopefully many episodes of Bard Advice, a D&D slash TTRPG slash life podcast where I, Charles Chaz Yazik, the DM, the Bard, however you may know me, do my best to answer those questions and dole out advice the best way that I can. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Hello, Pirate, Daryl, Mark, Cat Jazz, Scapelli, a lot of the old haunts. Thank you for joining this evening. I hope everybody had a great week. Hope everybody's having a good Friday. Let's get into some things. So as we like to do at the top of the show, just a reminder to, let me first turn myself down slightly. It occurred to me after the last episode that I was slightly hot. Maybe I was just speaking too loudly. Anyway, at the beginning of the show, we like to remind everyone to please send emails to bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice. If you've got a question, concerns, queries, complaints, criticisms, compliments are always appreciated. Send them over there at bardadvice@gmail.com. And if you want to get yourself some merchandise, you can do so at manshorts.com. You can also contribute to anything that I'm doing musically directly via PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo, all of which I am Yazik, Y-A-H-Z-I-C-K. Want to show appreciation to and give thanks to our patrons, any of our members. If you're considering being a member on the channel, that's a cool thing. You get access to cool stickers, you get a cool name color change on your profile there. So that's another cool thing to consider, and I appreciate all who already do it. Much appreciation to the super chatters, and a reminder to please like the video, comment, rate, subscribe, do all of the things, rate it on Apple Podcasts, show some love. Just being here and participating and watching and or listening is enough, so thank you all. Okay, a couple of notes before we get into some stuff that I want to talk about when it comes to art, but just a few quick notes on the NBA Finals. I think I might have been right. I think I might have been right in saying that Jamal Murray was in charge of the Destiny, because it's halftime right now, and they're up 3 or 4, I think, in Miami. And Jamal Murray, he's that guy. Him and Nikola had those triple doubles in Game 2. Was it Game 3, rather? And Game 4 is right now. So we're going to find out. It'll be interesting either way. So for Art Corner this week, I have a couple of things that I want to mention. One of the things I'd like to bring up is, and I thought about this actually at the last second, because I was just going to talk about some of this AI art stuff that I've been messing with these last couple of weeks. But before we get into that, I want to talk about I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. If you don't know about it or you aren't aware of it, I'm sure you've seen this guy somewhere, even if just in passing on Shorts or TikTok or Instagram or something. It's really, really funny stuff. If you're a fan of sketch comedy or comedy in general, this guy he's on a different planet. I think when it comes to capturing just the awkwardness and the uncomfortableness that is humanity. So, not sure if anybody's interested, but I would highly recommend it. It's on Netflix. Again, it's called I Think You Should Leave, and I think that it's really well titled because he's just an absolute lunatic. And to be honest, it's kind of inspired me and encouraged me to get back into more satellite writing, as it were. Not so heavily themed on D&D and nerd stuff. Not that I'm not going to do that anymore. It's just that, I don't know, there's been a new fire awakened in me in terms of writing content that's just kind of standalone, back like we used to way back in the day. So that's a really funny show. I would highly recommend it. What I wanted to talk about actually briefly besides Tim was Photoshop Beta and Midjourney. Now, obviously, Midjourney has been around for a while. It looks like they're going to be releasing version 6 relatively soon. And Photoshop Beta has only been out, as far as I know, for a week or two. I think we've had access to it, and I've been messing with it in terms of generating art, as it were. The background that I'm using this week is one of those images that I made using Midjourney and Photoshop. So as you can see here on the screen, the castle itself was an image that was produced in Midjourney through several conversations and upscales and variations, etc. And what I did once that was finished is I took that square, because I believe that Midjourney, they essentially generate images that are like 1024 by 10 or 1048 by 1048 or something. They're squares. So I went into Photoshop, put it in, and just asked Photoshop to generate the rest of it, and then it did. It's pretty nutso. This did not take me that long. And I also, just for fun, gave Midjourney the prompt bardadvice about 15 minutes before the podcast started, and it gave me these images, which are just crazy. It's just really crazy that we're able to do this at this point. And personally, I'm interested to see what mediums are going to come from it in terms of people combining the art forms. You know, I've said it before on the podcast too, and I'll say again, I don't know why people are so concerned. I mean, I understand why they're so concerned in the grander scheme of things, right? In the idea of, oh no, AI is going to quote unquote replace us. But most of what it's doing, at least right now, is just eliminating labor. You know, ask any artist, they'll tell you that their medium is one of their biggest obstacles. And, you know, I think that this image that I was able to produce with just, you know, with just my creativity in terms of prompts and, you know, going in and editing small portions with the lasso tool and the magic eraser tool and stuff, I would have never been able to come up with something even close to this on my own just a year ago. So I think this is going to open a lot of doors for people. I think it's going to be really cool. I think it's a good thing. I obviously think that there might be some issues that we've not yet presupposed when it comes to copyright and stuff. And there, you know, there's going to be growing pains with that, just like I'm sure there was with the camera or the typewriter or the printing press, like, or the car. These things happen, like, and most of what it destroys is labor. So I'm looking forward to it. And I encourage anybody out there to participate. I encourage people to talk with ChatGPT or Bard or any of the chatbots that are open source and available to talk to, because in a couple of years, you're going to need to know how to do it. So you might as well just start casually having a conversation with the stuff. I'm doing it. I've been using it to help write and generate stuff like backgrounds. So I think it's a really cool tool that people can use for D&D and beyond. So that's Art Corner. And another just quick note, and I might do more of a portion of it next week. I might do it as Art Corner next week. But there's another show on Netflix called Siren. And I don't know if anybody's checked that out, but that is a really cool show too. It's a bunch of Korean women, and it's like a survival / elimination / reality competition show where there are 6 groups of women. They're cops, firefighters, soldiers, stunt women, athletes, and then guard, which I guess is just like, I think, like personal bodyguards or something. But they have to go to an island, and they all have a base and flags to protect and stuff. And every 24 hours, the siren goes off, and everybody, it's like hardcore capture the flag with a bunch of like really athletic women. It's really cool. I highly recommend that show as well. Okay. So, we've been talking about a lot of non-D&D stuff these first few minutes of the pod. Let's shift into some D&D conversation, which we can do easily with our first question, which is from Justin. Justin asks, got 2 kids, one's 3 months, the other's 9 years. My question is, how early is too early to introduce D&D? Thank you for the question, Justin. I think we might have talked about this in the past, but I don't know if we've ever had the question presented in that specific way, so I wanted to do it. I don't know. My note is, as long as they can understand the rules and the story, I don't know that there is such thing as too young. It's parental preference based on what you want your child to be introduced to. I think that it's great education. I think that it's a great exercise in creativity as well as working with others towards a common goal. And another note on that, which is kind of cool, is that common goal is imaginary, which is, you know, you find those in games, but I just think it's a nice thing. I wish that I would have had access to D&D as younger. I think that it might have been able to help me with like organization and focus, or maybe even just some relaxation from the real world, because the real world, the goals matter. There are stakes. One of the cool things about D&D is you get to kind of play out these scenarios where there are no real stakes. I mean, like, the very worst thing that could happen is your character dies, and then you just create a new one. So, all of those things said, I think the D&D is a great thing to introduce to children of any age. Obviously, variables depending upon, like, what the content is, and those are all decisions that you can make as a parent. Right? I mean, the kids aren't going... The adventure that they play is going to be the one that you present them with, I imagine. So you can kind of make that whatever you want. Even if you just want to make it like... I was reading about it online, because when you asked this, I asked Google, because I was like, I wonder what the psychology world thinks of this question. And a lot of the stuff I saw said kids can start as early as like 5 or 6. I think as long as they have the capability to understand a story and characters, then you're good to go. Todd says, we started at 8 in 1982. We were totally murder hobos and the stories were lame, but we had fun, and that's the whole point. Yeah, I don't know. 3 months might be a little young. But really, like, if the kid can grasp what's going on and make a character, I say go for it. You're a better judge of your own children than anyone else. So, like I said, I don't think that there's like a set age. Everything that I could find in terms of research said that 5, 6. Most board games are like 6 and up, right? So, yeah. I mean, obviously, you don't want to traumatize the kids with like horrible, scary stuff, but that's a separate issue. If you're just playing D&D for fun, go for it. I don't think that I don't think there is too early, as long as they understand what's going on. D&D 5e is probably a 10 plus year old, but storytelling and play acting are types of games that have existed before 72 and should be explored as soon as possible. Modifications are necessary. Very well said, Scapelli. Better than I said it. Yes. So that's a good point. Like 5e specifically, when it comes to the content, maybe between 8 and 10 and up, obviously depending on the kid. But role-playing in general, yeah, get that going early. Kids do it anyway. That just occurred to me just now while we were talking about it. They're already doing it. Just give them a sheet. They're already making up characters. I saw some kid in the store. Oh wow, this is cool. I'd forgotten that I'd stored this memory. I was in the store the other day, and there was this kid, and he couldn't have been but like 5. And he was in the cart that his mom was pushing around, and he had a Pringles can. And everything, in his mind, everything that he pointed at with the Pringles can had a mustache. So he was like, so they were like in the cold cut section, right? And the kid is just like, bah, mustache, mustache, mustache. And I hear the mom getting irritated, and she's like, stop saying that. But because this is the kind of stuff I used to do. But he's just, in this kid's head, he's turning everything into the store he's giving everything in the store a mustache. What a cool thing. If you could channel that into a wizard who wanted to put mustaches on people, there you go. I think they're already halfway there. Yeah, a lot of the chat is saying it's just make-believe. My son's been playing with me since 11 or 12. Used to teach my nephew to think about the consequences to one's actions. Oh, you used it to teach your nephew. Yeah? Yeah, and it is more than just the things I mentioned earlier in terms of team-building exercises. I'm sure that if you really broke it down psychologically and sociologically, there's a lot of great things about the game in terms of development. Decision-making, sacrifice, whether that's time or yourself. I think that there's a lot of wonderful things to learn from it. And so I encourage engaging in role play as soon as possible, as soon as you feel comfortable. And the kids will probably let you know. And I would stay away from some of the stuff until maybe the 9-year-old I think is fine. You probably just start going with the 9-year-old right away. And the good news is, and the cool thing is, I imagine about having 2 kids is that if one of them's into it, they very well might get the other one into it. So if the 9-year-old really likes it, then they'll probably encourage the younger one to play as well as they get older. Oh, hey, Justin. How's it going, pal? Oh, he's playing Hell Let Loose. We've been playing that again lately. I didn't play that game for a long time. Then we've been playing it lately. It's fun. If anybody's not played that, check that out. That's a fun game. It's World War II. A big shoot 'em up game. It's like 50 on 50. Hello, Tletna. Sorry if I butchered that. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining. Okay, I think we got that question answered. My mom read us The Hobbit as a bedtime story. Good intro to D&D. Yeah, and The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings in general, I mean, it makes sense that it served as the major inspiration, but it's a segue that makes sense. Because, man, I read The Hobbit in 7th grade, and then my dad actually got me into the trilogy. And, yeah. So then by the time I was introduced to the idea of D&D, even though I kind of resisted it initially because I thought it was goofy and nerdy, once I got in there, I was like, oh, this is just everything I love about fantasy stuff, and it's a game that you can play. So, okay. Let's move on. Thank you for the question, Justin. Hopefully that gives you an answer. Go forth and roll dice. Enjoy the time with children. The next question is from my mother, who, by the way, I should note to everyone, is frequently a viewer, although not a chatter. So, bit of a lurker, Mom, but that's fine. We love you. I love you. And I have a question from you. So Mom asks, if you weren't a bard, what would your second choice of character be and why? Who would you never be? Thanks for the great content. Love, Mom. Thanks, Mom. Love you. I don't know if I've answered this question before. I think we've talked about it, maybe early days, but I don't know if I've answered it specifically. And it was an interesting one to think about, because it depends on the context, first of all. So, when it comes to playing the game, usually I like to tank or DPR. But if I weren't a bard in real life, I put down druid. Although I'm not all that outdoorsy. But I also put down fighter. Because I feel like maybe I might have, in another life, gone into boxing or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I still might. I've considered at least, taking some basic training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Wouldn't be the worst skill to have. But in the game, I don't know. It's tough. I feel like fighter and bard are kind of my go-tos, but I do really like druids just because I think that they're cool conceptually. What I would never be is a wizard. In fact, I don't think I've ever been one. I'm pretty sure I've not ever been a sorcerer either, but yeah, I figured out early on, like with spell slots and stuff, I was like, nah, not interested. Let's see what people are saying. Todd says, Warlock, you've sold your soul to YouTuber power. Avram, I'd be anything else but prefer sorcerer or wizard. Oh, interesting. That's what I hate. River loves wizards. Yeah, I don't know. I just, Spells are cool. They're all right, I guess. I just think that I like the idea of either doing and taking a lot of damage or being like, even like being like an edgelord rogue. I would prefer, or even like a healer. I'd rather be a cleric than a wizard. I don't. I guess that the spell casting stuff is intimidating to me in the sense that it's just a lot to keep track of and focus on. And also, I feel like with spells, there's like the Netflix effect, meaning that people spend so much time like trying to figure out the perfect spell to cast that it's like now you're at a place where you're spending more time deciding which spell to cast than casting the spell or contributing to the party or story. And I guess that in 5e, the spell list in general are bigger. So like with most of my experience being in 3.5, bards are half casters, right? Ish. You know, they don't have full spell slot development. In fact, in 3.5, I don't think bards can even cast any spells above level 6. I might be wrong about that, but I think that's true. Bards can't cast that high in 3.5. The fact that they can do so in 5e is new. And I think that's the same with druids and rangers. They might get a little bit more. But as far as I remember, in 3.5, the only classes that even get to level 9 with casting are wizards and sorks. Everybody else is kind of either 3/4 or half. So, yes, thank you for the great question, Mom. It's appreciated. It's an interesting thought exercise, not only for me, but for everybody in the chat. Because, you know, everybody has their go-tos, their go-to characters that they want to do, that they like to use. And as we try to encourage people on the pod and just in general, it's, you know, you should never be afraid to try new things. Although I'd need some really good convincing of story and plot for me to play a wizard. I'd have to be really hooked in on what's going on with the party and the story to be like, okay, I'll do it. And that's similar. That's kind of what happened with airships, because with Studebaker Peppercorn, he was like a half warlock. So, Gunslinger and Pathfinder, cool. The best bard spell, that's a good question. It depends on what you mean by best. Most effective? Most fun? I don't know, Tasha's Hideous Laughter comes to mind. Vicious Mockery comes to mind. Some of the stuff in 3.5 is pretty nutso. But Wish, yeah, Wish is... I think I've talked about it on the pod before, too, about Nightmare City, about the place where there's a bunch of wizards. Oh, no, that's Weird. That's a different spell. It's Weird. That's not Wish. Silvery Barbs is the best bard spell. I was just wondering how Melissa changes her voice to sound like yours when she raps during the credits. Melissa doesn't rap during the credits. I am the rapper in the credits. That's me. I'm the one. But yeah, hopefully that gives us somewhat of an answer. Thanks for the question, Mom. It's fun to think about. Bard, druid, fighter, never a wizard. The next question that we have is from River. So let's get into it. River asks, what do you believe is the most important job of a dungeon master? I believe that it's to tell a great story that keeps your players wanting more. Thank you, River. I'm sure that answer's different for everybody. I wrote down, I think your overall job is to create an environment wherein players are excited about creating and role-playing. And then I put supervisor of shenanigans, CEO of cat wrangling, the arbiter of entertainment, the fun referee. The players drive the story. We've talked about that before. I think that there are some people that get a misconception about D&D where they think that it's the DM's job to push the story forward. that's not necessarily the case. It's the DM's job to set the stage, right? So the DM is essentially the director. They're not really doing anything so much as they're just kind of, actually that's a bad analogy. They're not the director. They're the producer. They're in the background. They're doing all of the stuff that you don't really see. They're integral to the process, but it appears and should feel as if they're not doing much. So it's just kind of it's kind of like when somebody climbs a ladder and you hold the ladder. You're not really holding the ladder. You're just kind of making sure it doesn't wobble or fall. And that's what it is with D&D, I think, for me. Like, as the DM is like, they're not necessarily driving the story, right? They're just kind of setting it up and like making sure that it goes how it's supposed to. And so with all of that said, I think it's the DM's job to facilitate a world and to generate a world that's fun to play in. Because if you do that, I think that the players will do the rest. For example, Airships of Nuada. When Ethan was telling me about that campaign, I was so psyched because it was just this world that he'd made where it's like a bunch of island continents and we travel on an airship. And it's like, that's all I need. I'm in. And so the story and the plot and stuff, it kind of, you want it to feel as if it's developing naturally in the sense that all the players have motivation to be here, right? Not only IRL motivation, but in-character motivation to be there. There's a reason that everybody's there. And so the world, if you could make the world fun, then the players are going to want to engage with it. And that was certainly, I think, the case with Airships of Nuada, or even the We Play. The We Play was cool. Like, it made you want to engage in what was going on in the story, what with all the, like, not to spoil anything if you've not watched that campaign and intend to, but there's stuff going on in the water in that campaign. And that, by the way, is encountered pretty early on, and it stays a common theme throughout, and it kept me engaged as a player. So I think that if you can make the world good, then the players will make the story good. And as Chris just noted in chat, DM's world, player story. Agree. Hard agree. You know, the DM sets the stage and then the players perform on it. And while they're performing, the DM supervises that the best way they can. And yeah, I think that telling a great story that keeps your players wanting more. Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what I said. It's just like a drawn out, more elaborated version of that. But yeah, you create a world. Well, you say tell a great story. I think that the players tell the story. Right? Because the DM just kind of is like, hey, here's a world and here's what's going on in it. And then the players are the ones that engage to that end. Like, oh, okay, well, we're going to do this. We're going to do X, Y, Z to the end of this outcome based on the information that you've given us. So really, I guess it's kind of a story you tell together. But the DM is more of like the editor and the players are the writers, in my opinion. So level 1 starting equipment, higher level affluent. Just start them with whatever they need. Yeah, I tend to be a little generous when it comes to DM stuff, as far as like what I'll let people do. Only because I kind of see it as a challenge for myself, right? So if a player's doing something and they're like, oh, well, you know, I'm going to do this because it makes me really strong. I feel like 70% of the time I'll be like, all right, you can do it. Like, we joke about it in the bits and the sketches with Sarah and stuff, but the DM gives Sarah a lot of leeway. I'm kind of really like that when it comes to letting the players do what they want, just because it's like even if a part of me feels like, oh, that's OP, I still let them do it. Then I just figure out how to counter that. And that actually makes it more fun for me because I know they're all feeling a certain type of way and excited about, oh, man, I'm going to break stuff with this. And then they make the thing and then it's like, oh, well, turns out you can't do it because there's no magic allowed in this area or something, you know, like. But, yeah, I feel like we got totally off topic. Oh, yeah, we're talking about DMs and their job. Yeah. Supervise the shenanigans. Just make sure nobody doesn't freak out. and don't get your BBEG killed in the first 10 minutes. Players can only tell a great story when they engage. I know players that just can't RP but love to roll dice. Yeah, true. And that's, you know, the party matters too. It's all a very complicated machine. Combination of things. But I think overall, the DM's job is to just kind of like supervise the fun story that the players are unraveling as they play. There you go. There's the soundbite. So thank you for the question, River. Hope that gives you an answer. And everybody else, you know, and I will quickly say too, just before we move on to the next question, like a quick note. Like it's also a thing where it's like the DM's job is what the DM's job is, like for whatever you're trying to accomplish, right? Like obviously it's different among different groups based on the group sizes and what game you're actually playing and what the context of that game is. There is no one right way. Whoops. There's no one right way to DM or one right goal of being a DM. But I think that overall, yeah, I think that your job is to participate in the unraveling of a fun story. There you go. Thank you, River. Let's move on to the next question, which is from Mark. Mark asks, love the show. Soon to be, whoops. This, we're jumping around here. This is not Mark, this question. Sorry, Mark. This is someone else. This is Teresa. You know, if I would have just been reading my list of names, this wouldn't have happened. Because Teresa comes before Mark. Sorry, Mark. We'll get to you. This next one's from Teresa. Teresa asks, love the show. Soon to be first-time DM here. Our campaign doesn't start until next month, but I'm panicking a little. I have a solid idea for the overall plot, but I'm having trouble fleshing out the BBEG's backstory and general connection to the players. How can I ensure my final boss is strong and memorable? What makes a good villain? Thank you, Teresa. It's a good question. First of all, congrats on your first time DMing. I'm sure you're excited and probably terrified, but it's a good question about villains. What makes a good villain? So I made some notes on that. I said humanize them. Anime, I think, does a great job of explanation, not justification, when it comes to villains. We don't do that too much in American storytelling, I find. You know, our villains are just bad, and then the good guys beat them, and that's that. I find that in anime specifically, but in Asian storytelling in general, again, not justification, but explanation. So you get background on these villains and why they are where they are. It's not just as if they're these, you know, it's just like, oh man, he's a bad person and he's trying to take over the planet. They go into how that person got there. And so I think that when you do that, that automatically gives them more depth as a character. It's more than just, oh, this terrible person. It's like, oh, well, it's this person who all of this stuff happened to. And so now they've come to now we're here. Right? And it's not necessarily saying that whatever they're doing is okay because of this. We just go into understanding why more. And some other notes I put were Also, having a way for the villain to be affecting the players at all times is a cool thing. So as I mentioned earlier with the we play with the water thing, even though we were never really in contact with the BBEG until pretty much the end, he or whatever the entity was, I forget. Oh yeah, I guess it was a god. He was affecting us the whole time. So I think that that's a good way to kind of hammer the villain into the party's minds. So I said also, as to affecting them at all times, whether that's by sending assassins after them or changing weather or tide patterns to interfere with their quest. You could even bring the villain in and out of the story without necessarily engaging in combat. Any of those little things that can kind of keep them fresh in the player's mind. And also giving them depth of character. So, right, you don't just... I just think that it's lazy to say, like, oh, man, there's this evil sorcerer and he wants to control the world. And then that's the end of it. So I think that you can... And you also mentioned that you're having trouble connecting them to the players. Yeah, that's... fleshing out their backstory, I think, is going to give you that connection to the players, right? Because if you know your villain's motivations, you know how your villain is going to act, and whether that's specific to the party or not, right? So if you're creating this villain, they can do whatever you want. Their motivation can be whatever you want, and their reasoning can be whatever you want. And so all of that said, you can kind of personalize that how you want to. And by giving them more depth in why they're doing what they're doing, I think you'll probably find your answer on how to connect them to the players. But I think overall, humanizing the villain is a way to add depth quickly. Let's see what some of the chat's saying about it. Think about everything you hate in people and why. Wow. That's what Victoria says. That's actually not bad advice, really. When you're talking about a villain, like, you could even think of your own worst qualities about yourself that you dislike, or qualities in others that you really dislike. And that actually might be the best way to do it, is to just make a list of character traits that you really don't like, and then just kind of apply them as you want. Just make a list of terrible traits and then just kind of apply them and then build the person out from there. And then once you have an idea, that's what you do in screenplay writing. Typically the character has a couple of adjectives that are associated with them, and they can be vague, but it's just like, this is, you introduce a character and, this is Tom. And then you have a note next to it that's like tough, driven, right? And those serve as vague adjectives and ideas of what this character is, which is helpful for moving the story along. And then also, of course, obviously the actor playing the person. But all of that's to say, you can do that similar to when you're building the villain. Give them some basic adjectives of things you want to make sure that you hit, and then reverse engineer it. Add to his backstory in response to your player's actions. Oh, that's interesting. Although that might be a little complicated for first-time DM. The cabbage merchant that the party keeps accidentally destroying the property of could have become the BBEG by the end. Oh, man. BBEG. Choose with mouth open. Yeah. BBEG still has an AOL dial-up subscription. Just like BBEG red flags. That'd be fun. Never got into the BBEG in my campaigns. Player always quit after a few sessions due to other things going on in their lives. That sucks. That's unfortunate to hear. River said, I also love to have my BBEG spy on the party, and I regularly use a mole within the party. Sometimes it's one of the players, sometimes it's an NPC. Hell yeah, I love that kind of stuff. I feel like the last several campaigns I've played, I've ended up almost dying with one character who seemingly died, and then coming in with another character, and then that original character coming back. That's happened at least twice on this channel. Not that it was planned, it just sort of happened that way, honestly. Deadline Ash says, I like the humanizing the BBEG. It makes the choice to destroy them or not harder to make. Yeah, that's true too. That adds depth not only to the character itself, but to the players, to the party's decision-making process. Because now they have more to think about. Is this a thing where maybe this person just needs reform and we can stop them and capture them? Or are we going to actually just like kill them or send them to another plane of existence? Or maybe we could just like knock them unconscious and then put them in some institution of some sort. But it makes it more complex than just this. The BBEG's bad. Kill them. You know, it adds more depth to it, more nuance. Makes it more fun. Send or have the BBEG be a doppelganger that either ruins the party's reputation or tries to mislead the party. That's interesting too. A doppelganger that just kind of pops in and out. So, any and all of those things, Teresa. Hopefully that helps guide you in the crafting of your villain. I wish you the best in your campaign. Just be yourself and you know, prioritize having fun, and I think you'll be fine. But yeah, I think if you build your character out a little bit in terms of what they are, what he or she or it is, in terms of the BBEG, then kind of reverse engineer that backwards to give them a backstory as to how they got there. And while doing that, you'll very likely find the link as to how to use them with the players. But you could always do any of the things that anyone mentioned here with having a doppelganger that's coming in and out of the party, or what does this say? I know a DM that does amazing Grave World choice like Telltale Games. However, he has to draw this back due to stalling players out on RP choices. Boss characters who would be your ally or enemy depending on your choices is cool too. Yeah, most definitely. I talked about that before too. It's like Chrono Trigger in that way, where they don't necessarily have to just straight up kill somebody. They might join their party. They might help them. So, hey, Flint. Not much. We're just talking about villains and what makes a good villain. I think what makes a good villain is motivation to stop them. Yeah. Like, I think of, like, the guy in The Fifth Element. What a great villain that guy was. But an example of a villain who just kind of is a bad guy, we don't really know, like, Zorg. Yeah, that's right. Billy Zane. Although he didn't have much depth. He was just the bad guy. So, not the greatest example. But visually, I don't know why he came to mind. Wait a minute. Was it Billy Zane or Gary Oldman? Gary Oldman. That's right. Not Billy Zane. Why did I think it was Billy Zane? That's bizarro. Understandable motivations. If your players can see where the BBEG is coming from, makes it harder to straight up mark them. Yeah, most definitely. Anyone else want to negotiate? Yeah, dude. Oh, man. I want to watch that movie again. Oh, poor Bruce. I know that he's not been in the greatest of health lately. Man. Fifth Element. Good stuff. Okay. Well, thank you for the question, Teresa. Now we're moving on to Mark's question. Here we go. Hi, Mark. Mark asks, I play multiple TTRPG systems with friends. A few years ago, a few players gave me a hard time for my D&D character using a crossbow. I decided my characters, no matter what the system, will have a crossbow if possible. Yeah, dude, nice. Fast forward, now my characters are known for having crossbows. What do you think of this character RP? Not only do I think that it's cool RP, but it's even cooler knowing that it's to spite everybody that was giving you shit for using crossbows. Because first of all, I think crossbows are cool as hell. I'm a crossbow type guy. I pick up crossbows frequently, particularly if I'm playing support. If I'm like a bard, like a gnome bard or something, I've 100% got a crossbow. The note that I put here was, I think it's way cool. I'm a crossbow guy myself. Weapons is a good way to add a unique twist to your character. So we talked about that last week with sort of giving your character depth by just little things, as to even your weapon that you use is a quick way to add RP, add fast RP to your character. Because, to the point of this, it can be something as simple as just like, oh, well, I'm going to use a crossbow, and then everybody being like, well, that's stupid. And it's like, oh, well, now I'm never using anything else. I'm totally that guy, so I appreciate that. How do you handle crossbow reloading? Does it take an action or what? What about the artificer infusion that magically reloads? So that's a good question, right? I think that when you're talking about the crossbow reloading and the magical reload time and stuff, I think it's the same kind of conversation as we're having now with the spellcasters, who can do not necessarily the same, but pretty equivalent damage to the melee and martial weapon users. Right? So in 3.5, from what I recall, spellcasters were incredibly weak at low level. And I guess they still are to an extent, but I mean, in 3.5, they were way squishy. And so, as a result, the crazy spellcasting stuff didn't come until a little bit later. When I say crazy spellcasting, I guess I just mean like the idea that a bard would be viable in combat by themselves at level 2 in 3.5 is absolutely insane. That bard would be dead in 2 turns. But that's not really the case in 5e. That's because they've kind of like raised that bar. And so, that said, I don't know that a crossbow is like quote unquote broken. As long as it's not doing any more or less damage than other standard attacks from everyone else with their weapons, you know? If we're going to use a ranged weapon, most people don't think they can use a crossbow. People don't think they can use a crossbow. In Pathfinder, there's an archetype for the gunslinger dedicated to being better at crossbows than everyone else. That's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, I think the crossbows are cool as hell. And I feel like it was like a full round action to reload them in 3.5. I might be wrong about that. Reloading probably takes an action in 5e, yeah. Unless you had a feat or an ability like the artificer that would negate it. Oh, that's what you were asking. Well, let's see if we can find out. Reloading crossbow 5e action. What's the Google machine say? Crossbows are always ready to fire once per action. Reloading takes place immediately before firing as a free interact action. Huh. Well. And how much damage do crossbows do? A D8. So, you know, I just read it off the website. I read it off of D&D Beyond. So that actually might not be totally true. That's what it seems to be. You can use a bonus action to attack with a hand. When you use the attack action and attack with a one-handed weapon, you can use a bonus action to attack with a hand crossbow you're holding. Yeah, I really need to do more research on that because I'm just kind of like reading what people are talking about on Reddit and stuff. So I don't know if that's 100% true. But I'll tell you, if it were up to me, I'd say that at a maximum it would take a move action at the max, right? Like for me, you're able to reload and fire on the same action. Why not? Wizards can just pop off Eldritch Blast as long as they want. Or Warlocks, I mean. What's to stop somebody from shooting off a crossbow every round? Repeating crossbows were loading faster in 3.5. So that's your interaction with objects action. Yeah, it's like almost like a separate thing. But the short answer to your question is, Mark, I think that the crossbow thing is cool. I think it's a cool way to give a character some unique flair by just playing a character. Especially if everybody else in the party is kind of like, what's that all about? That makes it even more fun, because I'm totally that guy too. I'll do stuff that it's like, oh, you guys are annoyed by this? Well, time to do it every 5 minutes. So that's actually like where Augustus Montgomery's whole introducing himself thing all the time came from. Was because like I just did it like kind of randomly at first, and then I realized that it kind of annoyed people, so I was like, oh, well, this is his thing now. This is just what he does. If you're going to let me know that it bothers you, well, then I'm leaning into that for sure. So thank you for the question, Mark. Much appreciated. Hopefully that gives you a little guidance or encouragement. Keep doing what you're doing. I think it's cool. The next question that we have here is sort of related, actually, and it's why I put it after this one. It's from Mary, and Mary asks, what are your go-to weapons? Personally, I'm a fan of oversized swords or axes. Thank you for the question, Mary. So, beyond crossbows, because I am kind of a crossbow guy, which is one of the reasons I was excited about Mark's question and answering it. Mary's question I like, though, because I don't know if we've ever specifically talked about weapons in the sense of like what I like to use as a player. So, I wrote down at least like what I've found myself using a lot in the past. Giant hammers. That's a theme. Unique weapons in general. So I had a character that had harpoons sort of tied to his person. And anything that anyone else isn't using, I guess. Like I've had characters use whips, scimitars, flails, not to be confused with maces, but flails, the spiked ball and chain on a stick. Anything that's kind of unique or not already being used. In fact, I had Morningstar, yeah, no doubt. Just like a straight up like ball and spikes on a stick, like sans chain. But unique stuff I think is cool. Not just for the fact that it's a little different than what everybody's doing, but you might not know that you can have you might not know when that comes in handy. Like a whip can probably be used as a rope in a pinch. So I like the unique stuff. I have found myself using giant hammers a lot, but or giant axes, but that's just because I use, if I'm running tanks and I'm just trying to do melee damage, that's probably what I've got. I've probably actually got a hammer or an axe. Not a big sword guy, it occurs to me. I could probably count on one hand the characters I've run that had swords as weapons. Verena being one of them, I guess. She had a rapier. And I guess Tantor, too. Didn't Tantor have like a long sword or a great sword? Huh. I think Tantor had a great sword. So maybe I'm totally wrong on that. But the question was, what are my go-tos? And those are my go-tos. Anything that's kind of unique, like the exotic weapons list was always appealing to me back in the day. It was always like, ooh, I'm liable to take a feat just so that I could get access to this list. Although, to be fair, our DM was usually pretty cool about just like granting us access to stuff. Because again, if you're going to make the argument that it's like OP, it's like, well, isn't it kind of your responsibility as the DM to counter that too? Obviously, you don't want to give them too much power, but at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to make sure that they feel challenged. So if they want to do something, if it's not so crazy, I think it's usually cool. Our DM, at least Posey, Ethan, I don't know, was as cool about it, but that's also because we've only really ever played 5e with Ethan. But at least with our old forever DM, Posey, I don't think that he even cared about, what's it called? What's it called when you know how to use the weapons? Proficiency, right? He didn't care too much about that because I don't know if there's the same kind of rules in 5e with proficiency with weapons, but it was a big deal in 3.5. Certain weapons were relatively off limits unless you had feats or abilities, class abilities that allowed you access to them. So, and whips are exotic if I remember in 3.5. So that was always kind of appealing to me because it was like, oh, these are the weapons that like only certain special secret people use. Exotics, like kukris and stuff. Yeah, I'm about that stuff. That's my list for sure. My favorite weapon I used was a custom-made shield with a retractable line that pulled it back to the character. I designed it after the disc armor from the video game Rygar. Oh, that's really cool. That's super dope. Yeah, I like the idea of like returning weapons, but also like with the character Rufio Rosi, he was well, at the time I named him Rufio Rosi because I thought that Hadozi was pronounced Hadozi, in which I still pronounce it that in my mind, but whatever. Anyway, he had harpoons that were tied to his person that were tied in such a way, because he was a sailor, they were tied in such a way that it was easy to remove. So while tied to his person, he can kind of use them to help climb or, you know, use as like a grappling hook almost. But then if he needs to, he can just like, you know, a quick one pull, like free action untie to like keep himself off of the line. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, thank you for the question, Mary. Hope that gives you an answer. Gee whiz, we're running here towards the end, running on the line. So we're down to the last question. The last question. Man, I feel like this thing goes by so fast. It goes by faster every week. This last question that we have is from Nick. And Nick asks, what's it like being famous in the D&D/YouTube community? P.S. You guys should bring back the Brad the Bad Bard type sketches. Those were hilariously awesome. Thanks for being the bard and for all the advice. Well, thank you, Nick. Funny that you mentioned that about the Brad the Bad Bard type sketches, because Justin and I have been speaking lately about not going back to those full time, but just, you know, maybe doing some more of those, because we've got a couple of things, a couple of special episodes coming up the next few weeks that are different than stuff that we've done. You'll see what I'm talking about on Sunday when the episode comes out. But that said, I'm not opposed to that idea at all. In fact, Justin and I have been thinking about some funny standalone D&D sketches that we might start producing either on this channel, or I don't know if maybe we'll put together another channel to do like other standalone sketch comedy, but that's, you bringing that up is giving me more motivation to do it. So as to the first part of the question, I don't consider myself famous in any respect. I don't want to be. I don't know that we're quote unquote famous among even the D&D community. Like I think if you put a list together of like the D&D community, like content creators as it were, I don't know how high we would land on that list, honestly. I mean, like even among the D&D community, we're like, I don't know that we're all that popular, and we're certainly not as popular as we once were. But all of that's to say, like, it's a good feeling. I don't really care about like fame or like popularity or like who knows me. I just care about people appreciating the content. So my whole goal as an artist is, really my main goal as an artist is to inspire other people to create art, because I feel like there's entirely too many people on this planet that have an affinity for art, have an ability for art, have a passion for art, and are not able to do it because of other extenuating circumstances, likely things like the economy. So, you know, people can only, when you're surviving, it's difficult to do other stuff that you want to do. I know, I've done it. I've lived both worlds. I'm thankful and appreciative to live in this time where I'm able to make a decent living, a very decent living, doing what I love. So in that respect, it's great, because I feel like there's an appreciation from the community as to the stuff that we create. And that's my main goal at the end of the day, is to inspire other artists to create, but it's also to just like make people laugh and just kind of like make life easier, because like life's hard, right? It's just difficult for everybody for all kinds of reasons. And so if you can even just for 5 minutes take some time to just laugh, well, that's what it's all about, right? So let me see what some of the chat's saying. Today's my birthday, and I have a birthday wish. If you're willing and able, please consider donating blood and or joining a bone marrow registry. If not, that's more than fine too. Thank you, Jacko. You're actually the second person, including my grandmother, who has asked me about donating blood. And fun fact, even though I've not done it in a very long time, I've donated like over 5 gallons of blood. There was a period in my early 20s where I don't know what it was. It just felt good, I guess, doing it. But, you know, these days you can get paid for it, for the platelets and stuff. But if with the Florida-Georgia Blood Alliance, platelet donations count as double donations. So I used to go do it a lot. I haven't in a long time, in several years. And honestly, I don't know how great my I don't know how great my blood is in general, but yes, that is a message to everyone. If you can give blood, go do it. People need it. You can save somebody's life. It's not much of an imposition on yourself, and you probably get like an orange juice and a cookie. So that's cool. Yeah, free snack. You can't go wrong there. Did the dip in popularity change the boundaries you'd approach? I wouldn't say so. I think that I approached the content the same way that I did now as I did 7 years ago. I think it's more that it's just diminishing returns in the sense of people kind of tired of seeing the same old thing, which is why we're talking about, you know, doing other stuff, maybe stepping away from that and doing more of the D&D satellite sketches, as it were, just because it's become so formulaic. And yeah, I don't know what it is. It's a combination of things, right? Like we lost some people when we started doing sponsors. We lost some people when the videos got longer. And I think now, because everything is about shorts, that any of these kind of like long form videos, unless people are like really passionate about watching them, YouTube's certainly not promoting them. YouTube's certainly not like pushing, 10-minute sketch videos. They don't care about that. They're pushing the short that's 50 seconds that has 28 million views. And I can't blame them for that, right? They're trying to compete with TikTok, and it's not just about TikTok, right? It's also about our attention span. It's about the youth, like Gen Z. I think that their experience with consuming content is a lot different than my generation's, and certainly more than my parents or grandparents. And so they need it. They need the joke quicker, and then they need the ability to get to the next thing quicker. And so the idea of like, oh man, yeah, I'm going to sit down and watch this 12-minute sketch, it doesn't have the value that it did even 5 years ago. And it's just the nature of, I think, where we're going as a species when it comes to content production and consumption. Because I find myself doing it too. The only long form stuff I really even watch are podcasts, and that's mostly because I'm just listening to them in the background. Most of my content, as far as like funny jokes that I watch, is on TikTok. And even the I Think You Should Leave show with Tim Robinson, those episodes are like 15 minutes, which is part of why it's so good. Because he gets in and gets out. He gets in 2 minutes, tells the joke, gets out. We won't be going all in on shorts for sure. Like we've made some, and we've tried to, I think, capitalize on the space, but it's not ever our plan, as far as I know, to just like, all right, we're gonna just make shorts for YouTube now. Like we don't have any plans to stop the D&D editions. Those are gonna continue to go. I just think that there are some other themes that we would like to explore, whether that's on our own channel or whether that's on another channel. Either way, the D&D editions, as far as I know at the moment, we don't have any plans to stop those anytime soon. So TikTok edition. Yeah, I know. I was thinking about 15 45-second episodes that you can watch online. You know, that's actually not a bad idea. Huh. People might hate us for that. But it's interesting. I will say too, I've heard from people that like reposting content is helpful, but I'm not really about that. Like again, for me, the idea is to just inspire others to create art and also hopefully make them laugh, make them smile, make them happy. The game of it all, I'm not really interested in. You know, I've never really been much for or good at marketing or like networking. I'm all right at networking, I guess, but I'm not very good at the game of it all. I just like to make stuff. So we'll just see whatever we can do. See how it goes. I only just got Instagram for a radio contest, which I won $5,000. Huh. Check your email about the shorts idea. Would be perfect for that format. Oh, cool. Yeah, we'll do. Some of the emails I do my best to get through them all. I think I'm still a little behind. I think there's still a couple ones I haven't opened, but we will get there. Whew, man. We did it again, team. Here we are again at the end of the episodes. How did this happen? Choose Your Own Adventure shorts. You know, I'm really, really glad that you brought that up because we've discussed doing a Choose Your Own Adventure before. In fact, I have a paper somewhere where I've written down how it would work, and it would actually be 11 separate videos. It can be done. And it likely will be done. That'd be a really cool way to do it, though, with the shorts. And they're like 45 or 50 seconds a piece. I like it. I'll think more on that. We'll make that work. We'll figure that out for sure. Okay, team. Here we are again at the end. I can't believe it. It just goes by faster every week. I appreciate everybody coming and hanging out. Let's quickly remind everyone, as we like to do, of the email, which is bardadvice@gmail.com. If you didn't already know, it also looks like bardadvice. Please send any questions there. Even if you think that the question is silly or you think that it wouldn't be interesting, I always need questions. So send them to bardadvice@gmail.com. If you want to get yourself some merch, you can do so by going to manshorts.com. And if you want to produce, or rather, if you would like to contribute to anything that I'm doing musically, you can do so via Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo, all of which are Yazik, YAHZICK. Nuggets win. Interesting. Did they? Let's confirm that with my eyeballs. Not that I don't believe you, but yep, that's a Nuggets win. Now, they're going back to Denver for game 5, so looks like it's Nuggets in 5. Looks like I might have. Maybe I didn't get the finals pair right, but I think I might have gotten the outcome of the finals here right, you know? Nikola Jokic is just too good, and then Jamal Murray with 15 and 12 tonight. Not even that many points, but making up for it with the dimes. All right, I'll stop talking about basketball. We've got to get out of here. Thank you all for joining. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I look forward to doing this next week. I will be here, same Bard time, same Bard channel for episode 26 at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friday on the Man Shorts YouTube channel. The audio for this podcast will be available tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's it. That's all we got for this week. So thanks everybody for joining, and I hope you have a great evening.